what must it be like, I'm wondering, to live in a place where people aren't oppressed by the nature of their skin or something. What does it feel like to you to hear the grief that some of the people in these other parts of the world feel? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I was just wondering if people are divided in different ways, or there isn't a sense of division. And I know that's a big subject, in different places, how oppression works.
Well, frankly, it is something that I don't really feel deep in my heart about the segregation. And I have been listening to you all, that how deep you hold this difficulty in your country about the superficial look of the color, or maybe by names, maybe whether you're Jewish or not, or something like that. But in Japan, everything is hidden, not seen superficially, but we have sort of stereotype prejudice about Korean people or Chinese people, and within us too, within Japanese. In olden days, we had class divisions. Samurai was the top, and the farmers came, and then the merchants. Craftsmen and merchants. And below that, there was other class that was considered like animals. The class that we learned dealt with a butcher class who dealt with killing animals. And when it comes to marriage, sometimes the talk appears. He belongs to that class that we never talk openly. And the parents may object to the marriage. So we don't see that in a superficial life, like color or some religion, but we do have that segregation somewhere hidden in deeper part of my body, that there is there. And the older people, older than me, I'm already old, but older than me, would have a very negative feeling about the Koreans. So there are something alike in our country too. You may not know.
And Masumi, you feel it in your body, that legacy of separation?
Not in my body, but when it comes to the talk of the rumor of some marriage broken because of that
Mm-hmm.
cause, comes up, from the bottom of my body.
Mm-hmm.
But I have been listening to you that you people in the United States are feeling in daily life. When you started talking about the murder of whoever that was killed by the policemen who were Black people, I wasn't aware that evoked so much emotion to Americans that the Blacks are killing the Black people. So to me, it's something new, and I am learning much from this conversation, the conversation from this class, I must say. Yes.
Helpful to me to hear you, I'm trying to feel into what that's like in Japan.
Thank you. I don't know about China, Kate. You might say something. You have so many tribes, different tribes in China. It's not what is it? Only one tribe in China.
Homogeneous.
Oh, it's not homogeneous. Yes, right. You might have some feeling talking about the language also are different that people in China are talking in parts of and depending on where you live.
Yes. Things here, part of the things are similar to what Masumi said in Japan, like the discrimination is hidden underneath. And something is different. I think maybe because China is changing and developing so fast over the years. I was born in 1980s, so it's kind of the standards, the things, culture are changing, and it's kind of messy. It had a feeling of an equal feeling. It's more equal maybe because how can I say this? There's this time everyone's similar. Everyone's not so different. There's like I'm not sure what time it is. Maybe it's my parents' time, or I don't know. But people are not so different, or not so are not so different with their careers or with their professions. Like I was born in a small village. My parents are farmers. I married someone. My husband, his father is a professor. His mother is a teacher too. So we don't feel we are very different families or something. It's kind of it's okay. Yeah. We are happy together. Its racial issues seem very, very far from me. Maybe because we have this population of 1 one type or I don't know. I really have difficulty to processing the racial problems you are talking about. I can only try to imagine how that's like. But I do understand what it feels like to lose someone you love, Clara. The interesting thing is talking with you or talking with my friends who is from the Western countries. I started to realize my skin color. I didn't notice that before. I didn't think that a problem or something. I just thought, oh, aren't we? Oh, we are not the same. Oh, okay, yeah. Complete. Thank you.
Well, I might add my own experience being a Japanese living in the United States as a youngster, way long time ago. It was in 1960s, and we were called Jap at that time. And the Japanese products were considered cheap, and people had vivid memory of the Pearl Harbor attack. And some people looked at me as a country from who used to act very bad things, and from country that is underdeveloped yet, and selling things that are imitation of the developed countries' products. And I personally was sort of pushed around by probably the elementary school children, boys, because I was a Japanese and looked yellow, and then just sort of it was an act of looking down upon the people from the country that used to be enemies and did something very bad to their country. So that experience really remains in me.
Yes.
What it feels like to be treated very badly because of something that unrelated to my personality or as a person, but just because I am from the country that did something very bad to your country. Yeah.
I'm very moved by what Masumi said. And it's hard because even though I was not born here, and part of me wants to say I'm not from here, I am a US citizen, and I want to say this country did something very bad to your country, Masumi.
Well, atomic bomb you're talking about, probably. Yeah. And well, I have to tell you another story, if I may, that I was shocked because before I encountered this meeting with a person in Netherlands, we had been taught, and I had been taught, that we were the victims of the atomic bomb. But then I found out, talking with this people from Holland, that he had been jailed as in a war prison by Japanese soldiers in Indonesia. We were not taught in school about that fact, and suddenly realized, oh, I was in a position of giving tax and segregating other people. So it just made me realize, my goodness. So I was considered by him and by people who were jailed in Indonesia, soldiers from Europe, that Japanese are the villains. We're doing terrible things to them. And this knowing changed my view that, well, I have to choose the words. It doesn't come, the words don't come yet, but change the views to look at the world in various ways. Yeah.
Masumi, it just seems like we're kind of back to where we started from in another place on the spiral. Early on, there was this conversation about good and bad. And so I'm hearing you say how your views changed when you realized that your country had also done some things that were not so good. My views changed when I learned that we did not need to drop that nuclear bomb, that the war had already been won, and that bomb was dropped in part just to test the power of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say that I think this whole conversation about good and bad, I think it's very, 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 very deep, because as I see it, like, we're all both, right? Like our countries and people and all that. And I think that I'm just reminded of a conversation earlier about the race issue. It's just like, it just feels like it's all both to me, right? And yeah, so I don't know what to say except that it gets really complicated because it's just not so simple.
Yeah, you're giving voice to that we're all both.
I just wanted to bring it back to Masumi and just say, how sad I felt about how you were treated. And I'm really sorry that happened to you as a little person.
It made me very sad, Masumi, because my uncle, my mother's youngest brother, was killed in Japan in the war. And my mother, when she would say the word Jap, it was as if she was saying a curse.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up with that feeling. Not that I didn't know any Japanese people, but just that way that my mother would say the word. And when you were talking, I was just feeling this terrible pain in my body about that, and how horrible it is, that experience of being victimized and blamed, and how it's everywhere in various ways. When Kate, when you were talking about there isn't that kind of division in China of these people against those people, and I was thinking how wonderful that must be. But then I was also remembering being in China and teaching in China and doing demonstrations with people about psychotherapy, and the terror of some of the students in the class to say anything that would be that would get them in trouble and be the wrong thing to think. And I was remembering the feeling in my body sitting with, especially one man. And of course, the language was a big barrier. It was in translation, but difficult to get the nuances of the translation. But to see how terrified he was to say his own truth that he believed about therapy, as if he were going to his death. And then that's there too, and that's hard to understand also.
Kate, you're nodding your head about how fearful that is to disagree.
Yeah, I agree. I think that might be a collective trauma of our country, our people. Yes, we went through a lot of horrible things,
Yes.
and first, China has a long history. Has a history being invaded by many countries, and then after the war, we had a civil war between Chinese, and now all of you might know it. It resulted in two places, mainland China and Taiwan. That's because of the civil war.
Yes.
And after that, we had revolutions repeated. We fought with each other. Horrible thing happened, and it was easy to get in trouble with what you said or what you wrote or what your ideas, what your opinions were. I guess all of people survived. They were traumatized by something. I don't know, because I'm young. I didn't, but yeah, it happened to my parents, my grandfather, my grandmother. It happened to them. I guess that somehow it passed to us too. We have that fear inside us, inside our bodies. I'm afraid of speaking up too. I'm afraid of that too. I don't know why, but I'm afraid. Maybe it's inside me, deep down. I guess there is collective trauma, right? I don't know if that's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think China has very where we have very strict restrictions for drugs, for pills. That's a trauma too, because of the Opium War, I think. Yeah. We have death penalty for drug dealers. It's difficult to be only oneself. I guess I still carry on something of my ancestors, my parents.
Kate, ancestral generational trauma is a thing, that we carry in our bodies.
I'm sort of feeling a need to just pause for a minute, because I feel so much of this thick, complex, layers and layers of history and trauma and grief. And fear and confusion. And it feels so important that we're gathering in this way and talking like as if we were gathering around the fire and sharing stories. And it's such a privilege that we can talk to each other